Welcome along, Strange Historians. This is the Strange History Podcast. Before I begin, please like and share this episode and subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. Oh, and do me a favor and check out the links below to learn how to support my channel. This episode of the Strange History Podcast can be a little bit different than ones previously. We're kind of doing this live in a way. That is, I'm just going to kind of share my notes with you and some information that I gathered in 2022 when I produced a show about this as part of a live stream, and I want to be able to just have the information directly with you without a million other things going on, answering questions and the rest of it. So now sit back and pour yourself a cup of coffee, or a tankard of tea, or a mug of mead, or a chalice of cider, or a flagon filled with any beverage of your choice, and join your fellow strange historians around the campfire. We had a cast of characters, so I'm going to tell you who they were. We got Charles Lindbergh. He was an aviator, an author, and an inventor. Then you had Anne Morrow Lindbergh. That was his wife, and she was also an aviator and a writer. Then you had Charles Lindbergh Jr. He was the 20-month-old son of the Lindberghs. Then you had Violet Sharp. She was a young British maid who worked for Morrow's family, and on June 10th, of 1932, she committed suicide. Then you had Betty Gow. She was the baby's nanny. You had Ollie Whatley, or Waitley, or something. I'm not going to be editing this, by the way, unless I really screw something up. So, like I said, I'm just talking to you and sharing this information, kind of as if it was a live stream, but it's not. Ollie Waitley. What do you think? W-H-A-T-E-L-Y. Go with Waitley, right? Ollie Waitley. He was the butler. His wife hired him as their cook. Then you had Colonel Richard Breckenridge. He was the lawyer for the Lindberghs. Then you had Dr. John F. Condon, a retired school principal from the Bronx. Then you had Bruno Richard Hauptmann. He was a German-born carpenter. You had John Knoll, K-N-O-L-L. He was a Bronx resident and friend of Hauptmann. I'm not making fun of people from the Bronx, don't worry. I'm from Manhattan, all right? I don't have the best accent in the world either, so there. Yet Isidore Fish, F-I-S-C-H, a friend and business partner of Hauptmann. And then you had J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director. Now check this out. One last guy here. Norman Schwarzkopf. Oh, God. Who could pronounce this? Norman Schwarzkopf, Sr. He was the first superintendent of the New Jersey State Police. New Jersey State Police. Yeah, I'm going to have fun here. Come on. He is best known for his involvement in the Lindbergh Kidnapping case. He was the father of General Norman Schwarzkopf, Jr., the commander of all coalition forces for Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm. All right, so on the periphery, so we got a periphery here. Evelyn Walsh McLean, who was an American mining heiress and socialite and social leader who was famous for being the last private owner of the 45-carat Hope Diamond. Oh, really? She was a victim of Gaston Means, a former FBI agent, murder suspect, and grifter who claimed he had set a deal to free the Lindbergh baby for a ransom of over 100,000 smackaroos, which she advanced him. Oh, wow. That's a lot of bread, huh? 100,000 smackaroos back then? Means disappeared with the money. He was soon found and he was convicted and imprisoned. Wow, an FBI agent who was corrupt, an American government agent who was corrupt. Who ever heard of such a thing before? My goodness. Well, good thing it was back then. We know how honest and everyone in the American government is these days, don't we? Alrighty, we got Charles Lindbergh. This gentleman was born in Detroit, Michigan, in 1902. You know what's weird when you say "oh," right? 1902. I can't help it. I say it. Everybody says it, right? But it doesn't make any sense, does it? Because 19 is obviously a number, O is a letter, and 2 is a number. So really, shouldn't it be 1902? If anybody knows why we, I'm assuming Americans, I don't know other people as well, say a letter, doesn't even make any sense, right? 1902. I sound ridiculous, really. But you can't say 1902 because that sounds ridiculous too. 1902. 1902. Why do you say oh? Why do we say oh? All right. Please leave in the comments below with a super chat or a super thanks. He was raised in Little Falls, Minnesota and Washington, D.C. His father was a congressman. In college, he was a mechanical engineer, but he dropped out because he was more interested in learning to fly airplanes. Well, there we go. He took some flying lessons but couldn't afford them. So he spent most of 1923 flying as a barnstormer as the name Daredevil Lindbergh. There's a creative name. He then purchased a plane named Jenny for $500. He then joined the U.S. Army Air Corps Reserves. Is that still around? Does anybody know what the hell that is? U.S. Army Air Corps Reserves. In order to attend Military Flight Academy. In 1924, he became a second lieutenant, but the military didn't really need that many people with his skills. That's interesting. So in 1924, the U.S. military is like, yeah, we don't really need anybody who flies airplanes. No need for you, Charles. Go, goodbye. So anyway, so he went back to barnstorming. For those who don't know what barnstorming is, it was like Daredevil kind of stuff. They called it that. It was like you're flying the plane at county fairs and that sort of stuff, and you're kind of zooming over barns, right? So it's barnstorming. And also worked as a flight instructor. Could you imagine? So how old was he at the time? 22 years old. Think about this. Are you 22, or do you know anybody who's 22, or roughly around that? I mean, it's pretty impressive. Considering he was 22 years old, consider the maturity level right now. All the guys out there, ladies, you could answer this. Let's be honest. If your boyfriend or husband is playing video games, sitting on the sofa, and he's over 22 years old, anyway, so this guy's a freaking flight instructor at 22 years old. That is maturity, ladies. You want a guy like that. Not like that. Not like Charles Lindbergh, by the way. Trust me. We'll find out later. But anyway, maturity is an important thing. And not that I'm one to speak. In 1926, he was a U.S. airmail pilot. So he's 24 years old at that time, and he was working for the U.S. mail, dropping off mail. All right. So flight from New York to Paris. In 1919, a French-born hotel owner put up $25,000 as an award for the first successful flight between New York City and Paris. The stipulation was it had to be done within 5 years. Easy for him to say. There were no takers, and so, in 1924, which was 5 years later, he extended it for another 5 years, and a lot of pilots offered to do it. But unfortunately, some pilots crashed before they took off. Wow. Some were killed. Ooh. Others disappeared over the Atlantic. Oh my God. All right, well, so much for being mature. All right, Lindbergh wanted to give it a go, but he would need money. So this is weird for probably people who aren't American, right? So you got St. Louis, right? Some people might say St. Louis, but it's not St. Louis. Businesmen businessmen had Oh God, they obtained a loan from the bank for $15,000, which, by the way, would be about $250,000 today. Lindbergh put up $2,000 of his own money, which was the equivalent of about $30,000 today. We're in the summer of 2023, so it might be a bit more than that, more or less. And $1,000 was donated by some flight organization. I don't know the name of it. So we had about, what, 18 grand to spend? 16, yeah, 18 grand. So then there was a San Diego company. They designed and built the plane for $10,580. Well, that's a deal, right? I mean, because he probably said, listen, I got $10,600 to spend. And they're probably like, what a coincidence. We could do it for $10,580. The Spirit of St. Louis was fabric covered, single seat, single engine, high wing plane. 2 months after it was built, it was flown for the first time. After a series of test flights, Lindbergh took off from San Diego on May 10th, 1927. He first went to St. Louis. Well, of course, they paid for the damn thing. And then he flew to Long Island. It's near Queens. The plane. Listen, for those who don't know, so you got Manhattan, you got Brooklyn, you got Bronx, you got Queens, you got Long Island, and you got New Jersey. Nobody really talks like that there. It's like movies. That's movie accent stuff. Kinda. Alright, so the plane was loaded with 450 gallons of fuel. The fuel was strained repeatedly in order to avoid fuel line blockage. And the fully loaded plane weighed 2.7 tons. For those of you who know stuff about airplanes, what do you think about that weight? 2.7 tons. Is that light? Is that heavy? Would you fly something that heavy or that light? I mean, I'm very interested to know what you think. 2.7 tons sounds like a pretty freaking heavy thing, right? Considering it was, like we said, single engine, right? Single seat. Just him, covered in fabric. But all right. Charles Lindbergh left New York at 7:52 a.m. on May 20th, 1927. Alrighty, so during the flight, he flew at 10,000 feet to be over storm clouds, and he also flew at some point about 10 feet over the wave tops. Oh, God. So for those of you who fly airplanes, so 10,000 feet, I've jumped out of airplanes. How about you? Have you ever jumped out of an airplane? If so, please let me know in the comments below. I think we're up about 10,000 feet, yeah? 10 feet over the wave tops, that's pretty brave. Right? Because you mess up, that's it. It's over. If you watch the movie, The Spirit of St. Louis, it shows the ice. Oh, so there was ice gathering on the plane, and that's a problem. And so what he did is he turned around, and then, okay, so he turned around to get out of that situation. Then I think he flew down, and then he was flying 10 feet above the waves in order to warm up the plane. And then once that was done and things were safe, he turned around. Oh, okay, so he was flying back. And he warmed up the plane, and then he turned around and continued with his journey. You know, he's staying up all freaking day and night, right, to be able to do this. And you just want to get there, right? Just get there as soon as possible. And this was kind of bad luck, yeah? And he's got to turn around, he's going the other direction. And it's like, for as long as you're flying back home, right, in that direction, flying west again, you got to turn around. So that was no thrill. But anyway, he did that. He flew blind through fog for several hours. Whew. Right? Like, listen, once again, I don't know how old you are, but imagine how mature, brave, right? Courage that this guy displayed. Amazing. He navigated by dead reckoning, which is the process of calculating your position by using the formula of distance equals speed times time? Is that how that works? Yeah, I'm not a flight. I don't fly. I mean, I fly. I get on airplanes, but I don't fly myself. So if anybody wants to give me a better description of what the hell dead reckoning is, I kind of have an idea. Please let me know in the comments below. Anyway, Charles Lindbergh was not proficient And so, at navigating by the sun and the stars, he did not use radio navigation because the gear was heavy and unreliable. So he flew for 3,300 miles in 33 and a half hours. Wow. Have you ever stayed up? He's actually staying up longer than that, isn't he? Right? 33 and a half. You stay up for that long, you at least want to, I don't know, be in your living room, right? You know what they say, right? Don't operate heavy machinery. Don't fly a plane. And here's this dude doing it. He landed at the aerodrome in Paris at 10:22 p.m. on Saturday, May 21st, 1927. The airfield was not marked on his map. He just knew that it was 7 miles northeast of the city. Isn't that crazy? Just flying around. Well, it's around here someplace. Oh, there's some lights. There we go. It has been said that as many as 100,000 people, that would be French people, maybe they weren't all French, but they were in France, showed up in their cars with their headlights on. It was the largest traffic jam in Paris history. Needless to say, he became the most famous man in the world. His awards and the parties and banquets and parades, too voluminous for me to even get into right now, but maybe we'll talk about it another time. And of course, he collected the $25,000 prize. So that's good, right? I mean, look, $25,000. That's righteous bucks today. And back then, that must have been really something. All right, so let's talk about, him being famous and kind of eccentric and a little bit strange. People are strange when you're a stranger. That's People Are Strange by The Doors. Lindbergh has never really been accused of being eccentric, but in many ways he probably was. I mean, how could he not be, right? I mean, this dude was incredibly smart. He was involved in so many important endeavors, and when he entered a room, it was like freaking Moses. I mean, you got the seas parting. This started when he was, 25 years old? So how could he be expected to think or behave like normal people when he wasn't normal? And no one treated him like he was normal, right? It's kind of like, when people make fun of Michael Jackson, yeah? For living and behaving as he did. How on earth, right? Let's show compassion here, right? Be one of these people that's compassionate. Don't insult people. Don't belittle people. Don't dig in people. Don't be a little sissy, right? Let's talk about Michael Jackson just for the great entertainer that he was and a little bit about his life, just for a second, right? How could he not be kind of weird, right? He was famous since he was about 8 years old, yeah? What did he ever know about how to act normal? And so I was willing to cut Michael Jackson, MJ, some slack, and other gifted people throughout history. I mean, these aren't normal people. Look, I'm not the most normal person in the world. People think Paul McCartney or Mick Jagger are normal because, they see him smiling in photos and they think they're just like us. But they aren't. Most people probably couldn't have a conversation with them for more than 30 seconds. Their minds are elsewhere, right? As all great people are, men and women. And thank goodness, by the way. Thank goodness they are, because we need our geniuses, we need our artists to be different. So people like me, we're used to, people thinking we're kind of unusual, right? That's just the way it is. It's like we're used to it. So Charles Lindbergh was more famous than anyone today could probably imagine that he was. And so, all right, this guy was very famous and maybe a bit weird. All right, let's talk about his main squeeze, shall we? Anne Morrow Lindbergh. Lindbergh because, she married him. That wasn't her name originally. It's not like it was his sister. So Anne Morrow was the daughter of Dwight Morrow. He was a partner at J.P. Morgan. He was look at this. He was an ambassador to Mexico in 1927. There's a good gig. He invited Charles Lindbergh come on a Goodwill. Hey, Charles, come on down here. Go on a Goodwill tour of Mexico with that guy, Will Rogers. And Charles is like, yeah, why not? How much are you going to pay me? And that's when he met Anne Morrow. And a couple of years later, they got married. And she soon got pregnant, and we know how that happens. And he supposedly said at one point that he wanted to have 12 children. Do you have 12 children? If you do, please let me know in the comments below, because you're clearly quite fertile. Unless you adopted them. But even if you adopted them, you could still be fertile. Just didn't use your fertility. But anyway, yes, if you have multiple children, let me know in the comments below. I have absolutely no idea why you would, but let me know anyway. When she was 7 months pregnant, she accompanied Charles on a flight from Los Angeles to New York. He was trying to break the record for a non-stop flight. It was during that flight that Anne got very sick. Once they landed, it is said that she spent 2 months in the hospital recovering. Good God. Some have said she suffered from oxygen deprivation. It has also been said there may have been a fuel leak in the plane, and she breathed that in. Whoa. To fly over the Rockies, he would have flown at least 15,000 feet at one point, and it seems to me that, well, you would think, wait a minute, hold on. So you're flying 15,000 feet. It seems to me that they should have had oxygen with them, right? But it's kind of a mystery. I mean, you tell me, for anybody out there who knows about flying planes and flying at 15,000 feet. Well, no. I mean, today I guess things are a little bit different, right? But if you know anything about flying, well, look, let's talk about this, shall we? I mean, back in the 20s, the types of planes that, that they would have been flying at 15,000 feet, would you have brought along your own oxygen? You tell me. I don't know. You're the expert, not me. So if you know, please let me know in the comments below. I'd appreciate it. And if you're listening to this and you don't know what the hell I'm talking about and can't answer this question, but you know somebody who, flies planes, have them listen or just have them leave a comment below. That would be awesome. Now, let's talk about Charles Jr., shall we? So, when their son was born, they named him Charles Jr. Do you do that? Are you one of these people that names your child after you? What's the real reason for that? By all accounts, some things were wrong with the baby. He was very large for his age. He had an oversized head. It is assumed that he may have had rickets and maybe even suffered from seizures. Wow, poor kid. It has been suggested that he had hydrocephalus. Did I say that right? Hydrocephalus, which is fluid in the brain. You know who died from that? Nicolette Larson. You guys know who Nicolette Larson was? She was in the 1970s. She had that great song. Oh, God, Nicolette. She was cute. She had long, beautiful hair. She was a backup singer for a lot of people. And she was awesome. I think that's what happened with her. Anyway, it's been said that Charles did not like his child. He had him wear metal thumb guards. I wonder why. He was pinned down in his crib with a blanket with safety pins to keep him from climbing out. Is that true? I don't know. I mean, if he was having seizures, maybe that would have been a part of it. But it has been said that when he would get up and walk around the living room, his father would throw pillows at him and knock him down. Yeah. I don't know if this comes up again later, but I'll say I think part of the reason for that is because he was embarrassed of his son for having rickets and walking weird. And so I think he was just embarrassed of his son and didn't like him. And so when his son would walk weird, he would just throw pillows at him and knock him down so that their company would not see that the son was having trouble walking. Jerk, right? I mean, are you a parent with a child that's, disabled or has rickets? Have you ever done anything like that? Throwing a pillow? Can you imagine? Imagine treating your son that way? God. Anyway, if that's the case. But anyway, there's a chance that a hole was drilled into his skull because of the supposed water in his brain. When he was 20 months old, he weighed roughly 30 pounds and was roughly 30 inches in height. All right, let's talk about the home. So Charles Lindbergh had a lot of bread, right? We know this. And he was tired of all the attention he was getting, or so he said. So he and Anne decided to buy a lot of land. I mean, hundreds of acres. And so they built a secluded home for themselves in New Jersey, about an hour drive from Manhattan. I'm from Manhattan. And I don't even say Manhattan like that. Manhattan. Manhattan. Just Manhattan. I'm from Manhattan. Big deal. Manhattan. You know where Manhattan is. And Manhattan. You know what's cool about Manhattan is it's New York, New York. Right? So you write me a letter, right? It's like Scott Cardinal, blah, 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 blah. What was 72nd Street? 10011, New York City. You can just write New York City on the envelope. And it's like the postal people are like, yeah, I know what that is. Just New York City or New York, New York. All right. Where did we leave off? Okay. So they built a secluded home for themselves in New Jersey, about an hour drive from Manhattan. The architect was a friend of his wife's family. There we are. So if you're going to hire an architect, try to get a friend if possible. Or don't. Doesn't really matter. Hire a good architect. They could have hired Frank Lloyd Wright, couldn't they? Ooh, they should have done that. They bought land near the town of Hopewell and built a sprawling 2-story French country-style home. He had the land cleared to the side of the house for a landing strip for his plane. Well, that's got to be nice, right? Yeah, you want a driveway, right? You want a garage, or a garage, you Brits. All right, in the garage. And it's like, but sometimes I've just, I'm flying around, went to the supermarket to grab some peaches, took the plane, get there a little quicker, and then flying home, got to land on my landing strip next to the house. So while the house was under construction in 1931, the Lindberghs spent most of their time at Anne's parents' estate in Englewood, New Jersey. I know where that is. So the house is a 2.5-story stone residence. It is located at the end of a very long, winding driveway, deep within a heavily timbered area. I'm recording this for a podcast, right? So it's unlikely that even if I put up on YouTube, I'll edit in images. So if you want to see the damn freaking house, just go on Google and type up Charles Lindbergh's house in New Jersey, or whatever you want to type up. I mean, maybe I'll throw in an image, but don't count on it. It's very time consuming. And but anyway, that's the good thing to do. Or you know what you can do? You can subscribe to me on Patreon. How's that for an idea? I have a Patreon. Lots of people there supporting me. You could sign up on Patreon. You'd be helping me out a lot. I'd really appreciate it. You can send me messages. It'd be cool. And I'll post some images there of the house and some other stuff, actually. I've got a lot of photos. And yeah, that'd be cool. You want to do that? You could also become a member of this channel if you're listening on YouTube. And I can figure out something to maybe edit together some video with some images as well. Yeah, that's cool. So there is an incentive right now to become a member or go on Patreon or both. Ooh, both. Do both. Come on. What's a few bucks between friends? Come on. All right, so the house is still is 2.5-story stone residence located at the end of a very long, winding driveway deep within a heavily timbered area. There was a formal courtyard at the main entrance, still is. The exterior walls are of heavy rubble stone. Rubble stone construction, that was covered in a white stucco. So that's nice. And it's got steep cross-gable slate roof. And the slate has graduated textures which give the roof and an undulating, wavy appearance. The roof, don't worry, I'm going to get through this quick. People like me, you weirdo architect people, we like to describe stuff. So the roof contains many skylights that are composed of glass bricks. Nice. The chimneys are constructed of feldspar and are rectangular or square in shape, and are, with blue stone caps. And in front of the house, you got that formal courtyard with a 3-foot high wall. The house has 28-inch stone walls. Wow. 28-inch stone walls. So a foot is 12 inches, right? So 2 feet, 24 inches. And so you got roughly almost nearly 2.5 foot. Imagine, right, the temperature control. Nice. Okay, so practical jokes. It's been said that Charles Lindbergh was a practical joker, and many of which were kind of sadistic and cruel. And some people are sadistic and cruel. Welcome to social media, right? Go on Twitter for a while. You'll see all kinds of sadists and cruel people who seem to take some kind of, I don't know, pleasure in being abusive to other people. I don't know. And she got Charles Lindbergh being like that. I don't get it. I have a rule. Never do anything you'd be embarrassed to tell your grandmother you did. Unless, of course, it's with your, spouse, boyfriend, or girlfriend, but that's different. All right, so kidnapping. Sometime between 8 to 10 p.m. on March 1st, 1932, when Charles and Anne and their staff were home and Charles Jr. was sleeping in his crib, a ladder was placed up against his window. Someone entered his bedroom, put him in a sack. Okay, how do they know? And kidnapped him. That evening, Charles was not supposed to be home. He was supposed to be speaking to a crowd in New York City. That's Manhattan. But it's been said that he forgot. You think that happened? You think Charles Lindbergh forgot? Maybe. When the nurse went to check on the baby, Charles Jr., she discovered he was gone, and she went to alert the family. When Charles went in there, he looked around, and he found a ransom note on the windowsill. He refused to open it. He said it should only be read by the police. Well, that's unusual. If you were going to abduct a baby out of their crib, wouldn't you put the ransom note in the crib? Why would you put it on the windowsill of an open window? Not sure how much sense that makes, but fine. He refused to open it. He said it should only be read by the police. Let me know in the comments below, if you don't mind, if you walked into your baby's bedroom and you saw that your child had been abducted and you found a ransom note on the windowsill, would you open it or would you refuse to open it? I mean, especially back then, this isn't like, today you call the police and they're there in a jiffy. So, I mean, who knows how long it took, but either way, what if it said, look, you got 5 minutes to blah, 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 blah. I mean, why the hell would you not open it? Seems a bit suspicious. At some point, it's also been reported that he ordered the baby's room to be cleaned. But it is not clear whether that was done before or after the police and the media arrived about a half hour later. A half hour later, your moms, dads, aunts, uncles, whatever, anybody really, your child just got abducted. You got a ransom note in your hand, and you sat around for a half freaking hour. I'm not going to open this. Oh, no, wait for the police. The police will open them. They're not going to open it till now. Honey, open it up. Let's see what it says. It might be important. Nope, they ain't going to do it. Wait for the police. Jerk. Anyway, it's been said that Charles Lindbergh went outside with a flashlight and looked around and supposedly found a ladder near a service road. But reports vary. It's also been said that the ladder was still leaning against the window. When the police arrived, Charles Lindbergh insisted on being in charge. Oh, did he? He would not allow them to be in charge of the investigation. If you're a police officer, if you work in law enforcement in any capacity, you're going to let some rich and famous guy tell you what to do? Wait, strike that. Unless you're from the FBI. Forget it. Just joking, FBI. Just joking. Just joking. Department of Homeland Security. Just joking. I'm sure rich people aren't bossing you around. Don't worry. It's just a podcast. We're just being silly. Relax. Anyway, this is what happened. He insisted on being in charge, and the police were like, okay. Once word got out, Al Capone and other mobsters offered to help, but their offers were politely declined. Yeah, and listen, first of all, if Al Capone offers to help, take the freaking help. I mean, come on. This guy, maybe he could have helped. You never know. But okay, they politely declined. At least it was polite. I'm going to take it there. Why not? Why not? Seriously, why the hell not? Well, we'll find out, won't we? Let's talk about the latter. It's likely that the kidnappers were hardcore criminals, right? But it also seems likely that that probably two kidnappers went there. Because one had to hold the ladder and the other one had to climb the ladder. This isn't like today, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. You get yourself a nice fancy schmancy ladder, right? And we're going to talk about this ladder. So what was the weight of the ladder? Well, I mean, is this something that one person could have even been able to carry? Have you ever seen the freaking photos? It's a big freaking ladder. The kidnapper the creator really of the ladder had carpentry skills because it could expand and retract as needed. Kind of a big deal. Now, as far as the wood, there was a Forest Service expert that was brought in to inspect it, and he discovered that several distinct types of wood were used, including one wood that was used for indoor construction. And this guy, this is a big deal. He traveled to wood factories and processing centers to make comparisons. Could you imagine that kind of, hitting the ground, right? And just walking and going to different places, the amount of time that must have taken. And this dude, talk about commitment, right? He wanted to find out where this wood come from. And he's going to manufacturers, right? Factories, processing centers, and comparing the wood to wood in the area. Amazing. So it's also been said that the ladder was in three sections that were nestled together and easily assembled. It's pretty interesting. So let's talk about ransom notes, shall we? So on March 1st of 1932, this is the windowsill ransom note, they demanded $50,000. Now, the next day, March 2nd, 1932, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, there was an honest man, contacted the New Jersey State Police and informed them that they had the full cooperation of the FBI if they needed anything. At the time, they had no federal jurisdiction. Interesting. Now, on March 6th, so that's 4 days later, 1932, there was another letter that came, postmarked from Brooklyn, 2 days. Oh, it was postmarked 2 days earlier from Brooklyn. They demanded $70,000. Wow! So went from $50,000 to $70,000. A couple days later, there was another one received by Breckenridge, and it stated that the kidnappers would not accept the intermediary that was appointed by the Lindberghs. Now, at that point, there was Dr. John F. Condon. This dude was a retired school principal in the Bronx, and he published in the newspaper an offer to act as a go-between, and he also offered an additional $1,000 ransom. Nice. And then the next day, March 9th, 1932, the fourth ransom note was sent directly to John Condon. And Lindbergh's like, yeah, that guy could be the go-between, what the heck. So the next day, March 10th, 1932, Condon received $70,000, and he immediately started negotiations for payment through the newspaper using the code name Jafsie, Jafsie, Jafsie. And he would continue to respond to ransom notes in the newspaper. So that was the way they were doing it. So then you got March 12th, 1932. So after receiving an anonymous call, Dr. Condon received the fifth random note. Random note? Ransom note. Make believe I said ransom. Ransom note. Well, I mean, it was randomly, one of those random notes that was sent. It was a random ransom note. It was delivered by a taxi cab driver who received it from an unidentified stranger. The message stated that another note would be found beneath a stone at a vacant stand at a nearby bus station. Now, things are getting mysterious. The sixth note, we're going to keep on going here with all these notes, was then found by Condon. He then followed instructions to meet a man who identified himself as John, 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 just, John, like John Lennon, Elton John, Big John Baldry. You guys know who that was? If you see the Elton John movie, And, his real name is Reginald Dwight. And he changed it to Elton John. He's like, because he looked at a picture of John Lennon. It's not true. It's not true. Elton, you freaking liar. It wasn't true. It was actually, Elton was the name of a guy that he was in a band with, right? So the name Elton came from that. But John was from Big John Baldry. Look him up. Look him up. This guy's amazing, great voice, sexy dude, right? Cool dude. And Elton John and Rod Stewart both had their careers, kind of early on, thanks to Big John. So why Elton John decided in his story, in that movie about his life, to claim that he got the John from Elton John was really insulting to the great Big John Baldry, I think. So, there we are. The sixth note was found by Condon. He followed the instructions to meet a man named John. Not Big John Baldry, by the way, just a guy named John. They discussed payment of the ransomony. My Sharona? Ransomony. I don't know what that. Okay. And John agreed to provide further proof of the child's identity. March 13th, the President of the United States directed all government investigative agencies should place themselves at the disposal of the New Jersey State Police and that the FBI would be at the head of that. On March 16th, 1932, Dr. Condon received the seventh ransom note and the baby sleeping suit. Oh, so now we know. We now know this ain't no messing around. The people writing these ransom notes, they got the baby. It was identified by Charles Lindbergh. Then, March 21st, the eighth note was received by Dr. Condon. It basically said the kidnappers demanded complete compliance, and they stated they had been planning the kidnapping for a long time. Who cares? What are you putting that in a note for? Nobody cares. Whether you were planning it for a long time or not for a long time. What does it matter? You got the baby. So, good job. So, clearly, it was planned. I doubt the guys were at the freaking diner eating a corn muffin and saying, when we're done with this corn muffin, it'd be cool. Put some jelly on it? No. Oh, yeah, I'll put some jelly on it. By the way, in the comments below, if you've ever enjoyed a corn muffin, do you like it with just butter? Do you like to put jelly on it, or jam, as they say? In fact, in the comments below, let me know the difference between jelly and jam and which one you prefer. But if you had a corn muffin, do you put the raspberry jelly on it? Do you like the blackberry? What's your favorite kind of jelly or jam to put on a, corn muffin? And would you put the same thing on cornbread? Right? Is there a difference between cornbread and a corn muffin besides the shape? Okay, so they weren't at a diner eating a corn muffin and says, we got that nifty ladder we built that opens up in, 3 sections. We can go kidnap that Charles Lindbergh baby. Hey, good idea. Let me just finish my muffin. Nah, that didn't happen. They planned it. We got it. Why would you mention that in a note? March 22nd. The ninth note was received by Dr. Condon, and it threatened to increase the ransom to $100,000. For those of you listening to me for the first time, now you know why I don't do live streams anymore. I'm just trying to get through this. I would do live streams once upon a time. They went on for freaking hours. And it's like, you're still listening? And people were still listening. But it's like, how can you do this? I'm just trying to convey information here. We're getting there. By the way, this is getting more interesting. Hang tight. Stick with me. April 1st, 1932, Condon received the 10th note instructing him to have the money ready the following night. April 2nd, 1932, Condon received the 11th ransom note by a taxi driver who said it was... That's not written right. He received the 11th ransom note delivered by a taxi driver. It's not like, it wasn't the 11th ransom note by a taxi driver. It wasn't like, wow, the taxi drivers are busy. 11 freaking ransom notes already. So let's just be clear. A taxi driver delivered the 11th ransom note, and it was given to him by an unknown man. It included instructions on how and where to find the 12th note. Why don't you just give him the damn 12th note? All right. Dr. Condon found the 12th... Condon, did I say that right? Condon. Yes, you know what I almost said. Dr. Condon found the 12th ransom note under a stone. Under the stone. What's that remind you of? Yeah, you know the song One Tin Soldier? Go ahead and hate your country. Go ahead and cheat a friend. Do it in the name of heaven. You can justify it in the end. There won't be any trumpets blowing come the judgment day. But on the bloody morning after, one tin soldier rides away. Remember what was underneath the stone? You know the song, right? What was under the stone? Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Well, no, don't, because I'm going to tell you right now. So, there was the war, right? It's like, no, we want the treasure, and it's like, we'll share the treasure with you. It's cool. There's no reason to fight. This is, lessons learned. Don't fight with people. Don't ever give anybody the satisfaction of letting them know that you got under their skin. Never. Don't, it's right. It's like, I took martial arts when I was a kid. Never, ever get angry. Don't ever let anybody know that you're angry, that they upset you. No, you got to be cool as a cucumber. Cool as a cucumber. But you listen to that song, One Tin Soldier Rides Away, right? One Tin Soldier. It's the theme for Billy Jack, by the way, for those who don't know. Great movie. But, there's the war, right? It's like, no, we want the treasure. He's like, we'll share the treasure with you. And they're like, no, we want the treasure to ourselves. Like, why? We will share the treasure with you. What's the purpose? We've got this great treasure. We're happy to share it with you. And so they wouldn't fight. And so this army came and slaughtered all of them. And they're like, good, now we'll get the damn treasure ourselves. So they go over to the rock and they turn it over because, that's where the treasure is. Like, oh, now we get the treasure. It said peace on earth. That's all it said, peace on earth, right? And so sometimes you got people that are, warring, or they're at war, and you're the peaceful one, right? And it's like peace on earth. Why couldn't we just share this? What's the big deal? What's all the fighting all about, right? And so, what got me on this? Oh, I don't know. Anyway, Controversy of the 11th Ransom. Anyway, you see Billy Jack. It changes your life. It's a life-changing film, right? Life-changing. So, because, when you take martial arts, I learned this also. You look the person that you're going to fight in their eyes. That's what a man does, right? You don't look at their legs. You don't look at their arms. Because then you're going to give away where you're going to strike, right? And you don't want the enemy to know where you're going to strike. That's why you don't get upset. That's why you don't show the enemy you're upset. Because then you're giving away too much information to them, right? Because they see where your weaknesses are. Gotta watch it. Alrighty. Oh, what was I talking about? Oh, why don't do live streams? I've talked for hours, and we're trying to get through this. No one's listening at this point. It's okay. All right, so instructions on where to find the 12th note. So Dr. Condon found the 12th ransom note under a stone. Duh. Okay, so I went off on that whole rampage because it says that the 12th ransom note was under a stone, and the stone was where the treasure was, and one tin soldier that started the whole war. Okay, all right, so there we are. That's the only reason. Nothing weird. Take it easy. That's the only reason I mentioned the damn movie and the damn song. That's it. Because here it says the 12th ransom note was under a stone in front of a greenhouse in the Bronx. That evening, Dr. Condon once again met the man who called himself John. He had convinced himself to accept $50,000. He then handed him the money. Wait a minute. What? He had $70,000 plus his additional 1,000. And you're telling me you're going to meet the freaking what is this? You're meeting the kidnapper and saying, "Listen, I know you asked for 71 grand. But listen, between you and me, take the 50. Come on, 50 grand, good buzz, big bucks, take the 50 grand, come on, what do you think?" And the kidnapper's like, "Okay, I'll take the 50 grand, yeah, why not? Wasn't that much work?" And so they take the $50,000. Where'd the other 21 grand go? By the way, Oh, I wonder about that. So he handed him the money. John gives him a receipt. Ha Gave him a receipt and a 13th note. Hey, here's a note. I know you had 12 so far, but here's another. I'm not going to hide it under a damn stone either. So here's a receipt. A receipt. Listen, for those listening who have paid ransom in the past for, somebody that you knew that got abducted or God knows what, or, you get blackmailed, whatever it is, how do receipts fit into that? How do the receipts factor in? That's what I want to know. So that note said that the baby, why will the dingo take a baby? I know, it's not Australian. Could be found on a boat named Nellie near Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. If you're going... I know the song is San Francisco. Be sure to wear some flowers in your hair. Have you ever been to San Francisco? It's freaking cold. All right, so this says the baby could be found on a boat named Nellie. Nellie. Not like the song Chantilly Lace. You know that song? Chantilly Lace had a pretty face and a ponytail hanging down, a wiggle and a walk and a giggle and a talk. Lord, make the world go round, round, round. No, just Nellie. Just Nellie. Not Chantilly Lace. Nellie. Despite repeated thorough searches, the baby was never found there. Dr. Condon told police that he would be able to recognize John if he ever saw him again. Ooh. Investigation. So Lindbergh found the note but refused to open it. That's kind of weird, right? We're backing up, you guys. He told the staff, leave it for the detectives when they arrive. So we're going to start talking about the investigation because we covered the rest of it. Okay, so we know what happened and the ransom note, and you got the note here about where the baby is. So Charles Lindbergh said he would have a handyman fix the lock on the window. He knew it was broken. The lock on the window was broken, and he never fixed it. He said, yeah, I'm going to hire a handyman, but he never did. He also turned down offers from special government agencies who offered to help them. And he did not allow the local police to search many areas, including his neighbor's farm. What is this? The police like, oh, listen, we're going to go search the farm. He's like, wait a minute. Hold on here. I'm the father. You ain't going over to my neighbor's house to look on their farm for a body or nothing, no clues. Okay, Mr. Lindbergh, whatever you say. All right. So 50,000 smackaroos back then. That was the equivalent of, I think, $140,000 today. It's got to be more than that, right? And oh no, it was about $250,000, maybe. Yeah, $250,000. Look that up. Anybody want to do that? $50,000 back then. All right, so let's talk about the thumb guard. So 1 month after the kidnapping, the nanny discovered, well, you still got a nanny. Friggin' baby is gone. Once the baby's been abducted, I don't know, do you keep the nanny on payroll? Not like she has anything to do. But 1 month after the kidnapping, well, I guess they hoped she would come back, and it's like, the baby would come back, and like, okay, nanny, get back to work. Do you pay full amount? What do you do? What do you do in a situation like that? Pay the nanny? What do you say? Because she probably already lives there, right? So it's not like she has rent or anything. So it's like, well, we're going to pay you half the amount because you don't have a baby to take care of because the baby's been abducted. But as soon as the baby's back, we'll put you back on your normal payment plan. All right, so 1 month after the kidnapping, the nanny discovered those thumb guards, and they were made of metal, and they supposedly were there to keep him from sucking his thumb. So that thumb guard, it really sort of controversial. See, it was found in the driveway. See, it's a problem. You see, well, Lindbergh concluded that the kidnapper may have taken a path in the opposite direction. There were footprints in the grass and in the mud. And it's a different location than from where the thumb guard was found. And so when they found that in the driveway, it kind of threw a wrench in the engine, yeah? Because then investigators like, wait a minute. They abducted the baby, and then they went in front of the house? Up the driveway? That doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting clue. And so Morrow, that's an interesting woman. She was an aviator and the author of numerous memoirs. We're talking about his wife now. They married and lived at her parents', right, while their house was being built. It's been said that when the baby was found, well, you guys want to hear this? They say when it was found, it was missing its sex organs. But it might be assumed that those were eaten by an animal. Yuck. All in all, by the way, they ended up having 6 children. And his wife was an interesting woman, right? I mean, she used to fly on her own, and they used to go on exploring and go on charting different routes and stuff like that. Oh, by the way, after the second random note, the governor of Trenton, New Jersey, called a police conference where various theories and police procedures were discussed. And so, on May 23rd of 1932, the FBI informed, they said to keep an eye out for the ransom money, right? An unusual activity. And so they thought, okay, so even back then, right, 1932, that would be quite a job, right? You're giving out ransom money and you're writing down, the numbers on there. And imagine you work at a bank, right? And every time somebody comes in with $100 bill, you got to sit here and go through some log, right? And be like, 493-70009-65432. Nope. And you're doing that constantly. That must have been a thrill. Anyway, I'm just reading through some notes here right now just to give you an idea of some different clues and different information that may come up later. So on May 2nd of May 26th, 1932, the New Jersey State Police Office offered a reward of up to $25,000 for information resulting in the apprehension and conviction of the kidnapper or kidnappers. And then the Federal Reserve Bank in New York discovered 296 $10 gold certificates and one 20 gold certificate that was part of the ransom money. The depositor, though, was never located. Now, beginning on August 20th, 1934, so that's over a year later, 16 gold certificates were discovered in and around Harlem. For those who don't know, Harlem is the northern neighborhood in Manhattan above Central Park. Investigators were using colored pins on a map to mark the location of the recovered bills, and so they were able to track the movements of the person or persons who, were spending that. Now, neighborhood banks were playing a big role in all this, as were local businesses. It was determined that the bills were mostly being passed at produce stores. Imagine that. Imagine that. You abduct somebody, yeah? Famous, right? In New Jersey, you're in New York, not too far away, and you got, 50 grand. And the best you could think of is to go shopping at produce stores? That's your plan? That's your freaking plan, geniuses? You don't pack up and, 50 grand, yeah? Go to San Francisco. Wear some flowers in your hair, even back then. Go somewhere, get the freaking heck out of Dodge. But nope, go into the produce stores, need some peaches. Honey, need anything at the store? Yeah, some peaches, honey. Okay, I'll get those peaches. Need some money. I got that ransom money. Let me go ahead and grab one of those. Come on. Seems unusual, but all right. On September 18th, 1934, the assistant manager of a bank in New York City telephoned the police. Bring, bring, bring. Hello, FBI here. Hi. Got a $10 gold certificate. One of our tellers discovered it. Okay, be right there. It had come from a local gasoline station. It was discovered that a few days earlier, an attendant at the gas station was suspicious of the man who gave him the bill and wrote down his license plate on the bill. The license number was issued to a gentleman named Richard Hauptmann, 1279 East 222nd Street in the Bronx. Hauptmann's house was then watched by federal and local authorities. At around 9 a.m., on September 19th, 1934, Hauptmann left his house, entered his automobile nearby, and after what had been described as being an attempt to escape, he was taken into custody. A $20 gold ransom certificate was found on him. That means in his pocket. It wasn't like, stuck to his arm or anything. In his house, they found a pair of shoes that he had purchased with a $20 ransom bill that was ignore that. A $20 gold certificate was found on him. In his house was found a pair of shoes that he had purchased with a $20 ransom bill that was discovered 11 days earlier. What do you guys think, for those who are still listening at this point? I'm kind of winging this a little bit. Like I said, doing it kind of like my old-fashioned live streams. No editing, weird things happening, taking sips of tea. Hold on, I will do that right now. Important to have delicious tea. Do you like these kind of live streams? Do you like them polished, right? Like how they found... I don't even know what I'm saying. Yeah, okay. Okay, so inside his house, they found a gun, and they found his Condor's name and phone number scribbled on the closet wall. It's a bit suspicious. Hauptmann was indicted on charges of extortion on September 26, 1934. Oh, that's what I was saying. Do you like it like this? Kind of swinging, kind of wild and loose, if you know what I mean? Wild and loose, Like I like my women. Just kidding. Just kind of like this. Or should I be like, Hauptmann? Sorry. Hauptmann was indicted on charges of extortion on September 26, 1934. October 8th, 1934, he was indicted for murder. October 19th, 1934, he was... Oh, come on. Who talks like that? Right? Talk like a regular person, right? You talk to people that talk like me all the time, right? You're so sick and tired of people who talk like me, right? People like me are a dime a dozen. Anyway, October 19th, 1934, he was transferred to the jail in Flemington, New Jersey to await trial. At the end of 1933, the President of the United States of America signed a proclamation requiring the return to the Treasury of all gold and gold certificates. That was because about $40,000 of the ransom money had been paid in gold certificates. Wow. For those of you who are into whole conspiracy theories, which means you're probably right. Okay, so 1933, do you find it unusual because of one kidnapping in the entire United States, one kidnapping, that the President of the United States needs to sign a proclamation requiring the return to the Treasury of all gold and gold certificates in order to make $40,000 of ransom money that had been paid in gold certificates useless? You tell me what you think of that. You tell me what you think of that. The United States, the President signs a proclamation requiring the return to the Treasury of all gold and gold certificates simply to deny a kidnapper some gold certificates? January 17th, 1934, the New York City FBI office instructed all banks to be on the lookout for those ransom certificates. All FBI offices were supplied with copies of the serial numbers of the ransom bills. They gave copies of the pamphlets to stores, gas stations, post offices, and so on. Wow. At the behest of the FBI, Dr. Condon helped an artist prepare a sketch of John. They also prepared a transcript of the conversation Dr. Condon had with John in order to try to ascertain his nationality, education, so on. Now, as far as why Violet May have committed suicide, it's possible that she may simply have felt guilty about maybe inadvertently helping the kidnappers. Supposedly, somebody called the parents' home, right? And Violet's like, nah, they're not here. The Lindberghs aren't here. They're at their house. And so it's possible that she felt she may have given the kidnappers information. The police were also very suspicious of a phone. Well, let's see. We won't talk too much about this lady. She committed suicide. But, yeah, there was a lady that worked for Anne's parents. And like I said, Charles and Anne were supposed to be staying there, right? And so, that's that. So she felt guilty. She felt like this baby probably got abducted because I said that, they weren't here and that they were at their own home. I don't know. Who knows? Let's talk about the baby's body being found. So on May 12th of 1932, the body of the baby was accidentally found about 45 feet from the highway. That's about 4.5 miles from the Lindbergh home. It looked like it was quickly covered with leaves and branches. Needless to say, badly decomposed, right? Let's just leave it at that. 2 truck drivers, they're just driving by, and one of them's like, hey, let's sit on the side of the road. That's weird. And they pulled over, and they was like, hey, let's go check out what the hell that is. That looks unusual. And that's when they found the baby's body. The baby's... This is a cellophane warning, as my fans used to call it on when I used to do live streams. It's kind of like a code word that we came up with, so you might not want to listen. To what I'm about to say next, but here goes. The baby's head was crushed. There was a hole in the skull. After being identified, the body was quickly cremated. The coroner determined that death was caused by a blow to the head. So, I don't want to jump ahead too far. I don't know if it's going to come up again, but the reason they think that what happened is the baby got abducted, and put the baby in a sack. And then you got some, let's just say, assume it's a man, and he's going down a very tall, rickety ladder from the second floor of a house. Down a ladder, carrying a sack with a 30-pound baby in there, who at this point is probably jumping around and moving around and shaking its arms and legs and the rest of it. Now, that's tough, right? That's a tough thing. You're going down a ladder. Hold on, 2 hands, right? 2 hands. But the idea that you're going down with one hand, you're carrying a sack with the other, with a screaming, baby in there. So what they think happened is that he dropped the baby. He dropped the sack. And that the baby's head, got crushed at some point during the fall. And so there's that. All right, let's talk about Bruno Richard Hauptmann, shall we? So this gentleman was born on November 26th of 1899. He passed away on April 3rd of 1936. This guy was a German-born carpenter. Carpenter, yeah, keep that in mind. Who was convicted of the abduction and murder of the 20-month-old son of aviator Charles Lindbergh and his wife Anne Morrow Lindbergh. The Lindbergh kidnapping became known as the crime of the century. Both Hauptmann and his wife, and I'm trying to think where I got these notes from. I didn't write this, by the way. Probably Wikipedia or something, who knows. Both Hauptmann and his wife, Anna Hauptmann, who later sued the state of New Jersey, various former police officers, the Hearst newspapers had published pre-trial articles insisting on Hauptmann's guilt, and former prosecutor David T. Willens, proclaimed his innocence until he was executed in 1936 by the electric chair. Okay, so Bruno Hauptmann's like, nah, man, wrong guy, leave me alone, don't kill me. So yeah, he was born in 1899, he was in the military, committed some burglaries. This is in his own world, his own country. And then he entered the USA illegally, nobody does that anymore, by stowing away on an ocean liner in late 1923. Wow, how did he do that? He was arrested and deported. He then made 2 other attempts to get into the USA, at which point he succeeded. Well, that's not too difficult. Go to Mexico and walk. And you get anything you want. Lots of soup. I have no idea if they give him soup. Maybe. He worked as a carpenter, married a waitress named Anna Schaufler, and they had a child 8 years later. 8 years later? It's taking you so long, brother. A short while after the date of the kidnapping, Hauptmann stopped working as a carpenter and began to spend his time trading in stocks. On September 19th, Hauptmann realized he was being watched and attempted to escape. Speeding and running through red lights, he was captured after finding himself blocked by a truck on Park Avenue just north of Tremont Avenue in the Bronx. He was named the most hated man in the world. Those are all caps, you guys. The most hated man in the world. The police also questioned where Hauptmann had been on April 2nd, the day John met Dr. Condon in the cemetery. The day was the first Saturday in the month. Every first Saturday, Hauptmann and his friend Hans Kloppenberg would meet at Hauptmann's house at 7 o'clock. They had what they called a musical night. They would sing German songs. Kloppenberg played the guitar and Hauptmann the mandolin. Kloppenberg would leave around midnight, and Anna was always with them. All right, let's talk about a gentleman named John Knoll. So there's a sketch that bears an uncanny resemblance to John Knoll, right? This is the sketch of the guy named John. So the sketch that Condon told he's like, yeah, that's what the guy looks like. He didn't look like Hauptmann. He looked like John Knoll. Knoll lied that he was in the country, he lied about being in the country during the kidnapping, and then he left the country in 1932 before the trial. Knoll's activities indicate that he fits the FBI profile of a sociopath and psychopath. Go on Twitter. There's lots of people that fit the profile of sociopaths and psychopaths, unfortunately. It has been said that he left the country when Hauptmann was arrested, and then he returned when Hauptmann was convicted. That's weird. So, so that's the thing. Also, 2 footprints were supposedly found at the crime scene, and we know the ladder was too large for one person to handle. And so you say to yourself, is it possible that Hauptmann and Knoll were working together? After all, they were friends, yeah? Let's talk about Isidore Fish. On December 5th, 1933, during his farewell party, Hauptmann's business partner, Isidore Fish, left Hauptmann with a shoebox of, quote, important papers, end quote, before sailing to Leipzig to visit relatives. Hauptmann claimed he had been given this box, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string, and had put it on a high shelf in a closet. Fish had applied for a passport on May 12, 1932, the same day that the baby's body was discovered, and he sailed on December 6 of 1933. Wow. So the sequence of events told by Hauptmann throughout the trial was dubbed by police and reporters as the fishy story. So you ever hear that slang? You ever hear when people say, sounds fishy to me? It ain't fishy. It ain't like, fish swimming in the ocean, Bloop, 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 nothing like that. Ain't fish. That when you hear, oh, that story sounds fishy, or that's a fishy story, it's actually in reference to Isidore Fish. Fascinating, right? And by the way, it's Fisch. See, if you stuck around this long, you just learned something. Unless you already knew it, then you just heard it. Again, on March 1st, he said he had been with his wife. Every Tuesday, he went to Christian Fredrickson's bakery on Dyer Avenue in the Bronx, where his wife worked. He ate dinner there and took her home at 9, and then they went to bed so they could rise early the next morning. All right, let's talk about the trial, shall we? And we're kind of wrapping up here. Normally, I just kind of tell the story about what happened, but I have so much information on the trial and, these stories that I talk about. So I'll go ahead and start adding maybe in the future more information on this, since I know a lot of people find it fascinating, especially all the great supporters that I have on my channel and also on Patreon that are like, tell us more about the trials. We love that stuff. So I'm like, all right. They like the stories better, but okay, so here we go. The trial began on March 3rd of 1935. It lasted 5 weeks. The case against him was based on circumstantial evidence. Now, as far as his body language, from the little we have seen, his body language is very calm and cool. Despite being on an elevated platform, like he's the Elephant Man, being put on display for medical students. And by the way, I know a lot about the Elephant Man. Joseph Carey Merrick. You might want to check out some of the other videos on my channel where I talk about Joseph Merrick. And having all the lawyers practically on top of him and being very kind of abusive, to be honest. So he just kept claiming to be an innocent man. He never confessed. He never pointed to any accomplices, even when he was told that he could have his sentence reduced or make some kind of deal. Come on, just point to your accomplices. He never did. So on February 13th of 1935, the jury returned a verdict. They found him guilty of murder in the first degree, and he was sentenced to death. The defense appealed to no avail. Supreme Court of New Jersey on October 9th, 1935, upheld the verdict, and his appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court was denied on December 9th, 1935. Wow, they're moving quick, yeah? This dude was electrocuted on January 17th, 1936. The governor granted a 3-day reprieve, and then he was resentenced and set to be electrocuted during the week of March 30th, 1936. The pardon court of the state of New Jersey denied his petition for clemency on April 3rd, 1936 at 8:47 p.m. Bruno Richard Hauptmann was electrocuted. What do you guys think so far? We're going to talk about some evidence in a second. Let's talk about Anne Hauptmann. So she died in 1994. Wow. Can you imagine what a totally different world. Totally different world. This poor lady, right? And all she had to go through. And then, so she's living through the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, right into the 90s. I guess you could say that about anything, yeah? The world changes so much, evolves so much. But 1994. So ever since her husband had been executed, she always denied his involvement, and she filed numerous lawsuits against the state of New Jersey and others, trying to clear her husband's name, or, at the very least, to, he didn't have a fair trial, she was saying. And, in many ways, he really didn't. So Hauptmann, maybe, let's talk about theories, alternative theories. So is it possible that Hauptmann was played for a patsy by his friend Isidore Fish, who the attorney said was actually the one involved in the kidnapping? Hauptmann had testified that the ransom money that police found in his garage, or garage, if you're British, garage. The first time I heard the word garage was in that Elton John song. Levon sells cartoon balloons in town. calls his child Jesus because he likes the name. And he sends him to the finest school in town. But anyway, garage. Elton John sings garage. When I was a kid, I'm like, that was a garage. I don't know what the hell that is. Garage. Yeah. All right. So, police, so Fish is like, hey, man, here's the box, hold on to it. I got to travel out of the country, but when I get back, I got to pick up this box. So he left it with him for safekeeping when he went to Germany, and then he died, actually, a few months later in Germany. So there's evidence that includes that, like the handwriting expert, that Fish is the one who penned the ransom notes. And a witness who said he saw Fish near the Lindbergh home in Hopewell, New Jersey, a short time before the March 1932 kidnapping. By the way, I haven't mentioned this yet, but, so many people don't use the word, like, hang and hung, right? I mean, come on, we know what hung means. But people use it like someone who got, you're hanged. You're hanged. You're not hung, right? I mean, you could be hung and hanged, But, I mean, you're not. But, okay, so kidnapping is kidnapping. Get it? Kidnapping. So this is really a kidnapping. But it's surprising how often people use the word kidnapping when they talk about adults, right? Like, Patty Hearst, whatever, kidnapped. It's like, no. 18 and under, right? I don't know, under 18, right? 17 something. But I mean, I wouldn't call it kidnapping if you abduct somebody that's over 18, right? That's an abduction. You've abducted somebody. So, anyway. The suit alleges that evidence indicated that kidnapping included at least one servant in the Lindbergh household, or that of Lindbergh's father-in-law, Dwight Morrow, and possibly a family member. Neither was identified, and Brian refused to elaborate. So we're talking about lawsuits here that, representing the wife. The suit also quotes a witness as saying a man named Fish went out on 3 or 4 occasions with Violet Sharp and Ollie Watley, who were Lindbergh Morrow servants. See? You see? So Violet was the lady who committed suicide, who worked for the Morrows. And then, of course, we have Ollie, right, who was the butler, right, wasn't he? And so, meanwhile, you got Fish, something fishy, hanging out with them. And so it makes you wonder, were they involved in some way? So let's talk a little bit about it, some evidence. We're going to move along quickly here. It was reported that the footprints under the nursery window appeared to have been covered with golf socks. The rungs of the ladder were very far apart, 21 inches, making it very rickety. Would a man of Hauptmann's size, he was not the tallest dude the world's ever known, be comfortable using a ladder that was so awkward to climb and wasn't very stable? And so, you got that. And, right? For this guy supposedly such a great carpenter, and he knew he was the one climbing it, you would think he would have made it more stable. 21 inches, that's pretty far apart, right, for there to be the rungs. And plus, you're supposed to be carrying a screaming baby in a sack. I don't know. That's sounding right. And so, well, by the way, when the FBI got that license number, it was registered to a German carpenter, like I said, Bruno Richard Hauptmann. And that guy was spending money. And so, roughly $14,000 of the ransom money was discovered in Hauptmann's home and in his pockets. Writing samples claim that they matched what Hauptmann's writing. And some said, nah, it didn't. So let's talk a little bit about circumstantial evidence. I think we're winding down here, aren't we? Yeah, getting pretty close. All right, so circumstantial evidence. As far as the trial, so circumstantial evidence, right? You got a lot of stuff going on. It's like, well, I don't know. Sure looks like he did it. I mean, Condon's name being written on the wall, that seems to be, that doesn't hurt. But was he the one who wrote it, you see? And so, maybe it was one of his friends that maybe did this. Maybe they asked Hauptmann to build the ladder, right? Maybe they asked him to build the ladder, but he didn't know anything more beyond that. And so you might have had his 2 friends, and maybe they were the ones who did it, and they kind of figured, well, let's just set him up. He'll just set him up, you know. He's making it. He's the carpenter. The wood's coming from him. We'll leave some money in the house that he'll get caught. We'll write things down on the wall, right? The number of convicts. You know, there's all sorts of things going on. So, legacy of the case. Because of the Charles Lindbergh kidnapping, the crime of kidnapping became a federal and capital offense. So, here's my theory. I think that Hauptmann may have been hired to make the ladder. He may have been recruited to help and not known what he was participating in, maybe until it was too late. And maybe by then he got 1/3 of the ransom. All right, by that point, maybe it was just too late. He wasn't going to get out of it. He also probably didn't think, you know, the baby's going to die, right? So he figured, all right, well, rich dude, not asking for that much money, right, in grand scheme of things. So, you know, it also may or may not have even been an actual kidnapping. It could have been a hoax that went too far. What do I mean by that? Well, Charles Lindbergh, well, let me tell you a little bit more. Let me tell you some questions that I got. So, how did the kidnapper know the exact location of the baby's room? Right? It's a large house. And it's on the second floor, and they happen to know exactly where the baby's room was. How'd they know? A few people, right? Carpenter, right? Some of his friends. And they happen to know in New Jersey, this isolated estate. Just go there with this ladder. How tall to make the ladder. Where the baby would be. At what time the baby would be there, right? The kidnapping happened on a Tuesday. Supposedly the family was still there because Charles Jr. had a cold. I don't know. When not there, they were at the Morrow residence that had a guard at the gate and 26 servants. No kidnapping was ever going to happen at the Morrow residence. No chance, no way, no way in hell, with 26 servants there. So nobody but the immediate family and staff could have known where the Lindberghs would be at that particular time and date. Why did the police let this 30-year-old man, the father, right, the father of the abducted, the kidnapped child, boss them around and run the investigation? Yeah, he was famous, but still. After Hauptmann was arrested, the investigation was pretty much over, right? It's known that $3,000 of the gold notes were never cashed out in the bank, but yet no person was ever caught. Why would the kidnapper stay in New York, or kidnappers stay in New York, and spend money so quickly in New York? Wouldn't you be like, I mean, look, you've seen movies, yeah? You've read stories, right, about heists and stuff, and it's like, you get the hell out of that. Pack up, go back to Germany. Nothing wrong with that. I've been to Germany. Beautiful place. Go to Italy. Go to Spain. Go to France. Yeah, $50,000, right? Get the hell out of there. Even if they know it's you, get the hell out of town, right? So they're, suspicious. That guy, the guy used to be a carpenter here. He abruptly quit. Yeah? Find me. Catch me if you can, right? But no, I'll just keep staying in New York in my regular dopey house, my regular dopey car. No. Doesn't make any sense. Why not sell the money to organized crime? Let me ask you that. Why wouldn't you do that? You know, organized crime back then in the 30s isn't like organized crime today. Well, whatever's going on today, who the hell knows. But I mean, in the 1930s, you could have found Meyer Lansky. For crying out loud, I know where Meyer Lansky lived, right? And he used to go to Ratner's to eat, right? Be there all freaking day having meetings at Ratner's. For those who don't know, New York, Ratner's was a kosher deli, right? And but I mean, you could have found Meyer Lansky, you could have found Lucky Luciano, you could have found a whole host of criminals, right? Underworld figures, yeah, and said, listen, I got $50,000 here. $50,000. Give me $30,000. clean money. Clean money. And I'll give you the $50,000. Now, do you know how easy it would have been for organized crime to move that money? They'd get it to Chicago, right? They'd get it somewhere. Out of there. Quickly. Right? They'd move it through casinos. They'd just get it the heck out of there. And so why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that? Why would a skilled carpenter build such a ladder that easily broke? I don't know if I mentioned that before, but what happened is the kidnapper was going down the ladder and it broke. So this guy's a skilled carpenter, but meanwhile he can't make a freaking ladder, a rung, right? And so that's what they think happened with the baby, right? That's like, okay, that's why he dropped it. And the baby, supposedly died. Well, no, we know died. But supposedly died at that time, right? They didn't kill the baby. Or maybe they did, but I'm just saying, dropped the baby, smashed the skull, and then like freaking hell, we just screwed up our damn plan. And so they just kept trying to get the money anyway. But there was no way they could ever give the baby up since the baby was dead. So anyway, where was the rest of the ransom money, and how did a 160-pound man, I don't know, you see, you got a 36-inch burlap bag, and he's carrying him down with one hand. Could the ladder even hold that? Right? So that's 190 pounds, right, between the two of them. So, was Charles Lindbergh responsible? A lot of people have asked me about that, and I know a lot of people have discussed it before. So let's talk about eugenics as we wind this down. So, he was interested, obviously, in aviation, geography, and race. Not unusual at the time, by the way. The builder of the famous Ansonia Hotel in New York City, which, by the way, I've written books about the Ansonia. It's right down the road from the Dakota, my favorite building in New York, not too far from the Doralton. But anyway, the Ansonia, if you're interested in this, go to Amazon, type up my name, type up Ansonia Hotel, and you can buy my books. But anyway, that guy was a horse breeder, and he was a big-time proponent of eugenics as well. Now, on one hand, it's kind of creepy, but on the other hand, if all the best scholars and minds at the time were writing books and giving lectures on the subject, it's kind of hard to beat up on people for thinking, what was, and believing what was popular at the time. Now, look at all the strange things that people talk about now, that people live in and they believe in, they fight over. In 100 years, right, for example, people are going to be laughing at us and insulting us about some of the things they see us talking about now and arguing about now. And so it's always a good idea to try to understand people in the context of their time, whether or not we agree with any of it. Look at medical treatments, right? We laugh at such things as putting leeches on people and draining their blood when they have strep throat, like George Washington. But at the time, that is what the best minds thought. And so they weren't, they didn't think they were crazy or stupid. They just didn't know what we know now. And that's not the worst crime on earth, yeah? Like I said, future generations will be laughing at us too over so many things that you, listening to me right now, have done and said and think. That's fine. Okay? It's the way of the world. So why do people think that Charles Lindbergh was somehow involved in his son's kidnapping? Well, a lot of people blame that on eugenics, right? His belief in eugenics. He thought that his son was a sickly child, and that he would not grow up to be strong and physically fit, and he would have problems. And so, he had a child that maybe, possibly would have ended up in a medical, institution. So maybe the plan was to have the child abducted, kidnapped, right? And once that happened, maybe the baby could have been put in an institution, not kill him, right? Maybe put him in an institution, and maybe it just went too far, right? Maybe it just went too far. Maybe he thought that's what he could do. It's like, look, let me set this up. Looks like my baby got abducted, how much of a big deal could it be? Babies get abducted all the time, it's all right. And then we can go ahead and put him in some kind of facility where he'll be taken care of. Who knows? That's just a theory, right? Charles Lindbergh was kind of a weird guy. And people say he was unusual, right? And a lot of his humor, like I said, was kind of sadistic and cruel. And he did, I think, pull a hoax once before. He told his wife and his staff, I think just a week earlier, that their baby had been kidnapped. And they freaking flipped out and they went running around and, oh my God, really? And then he's laughing about it, right? Like, yeah, funny joke, right? Funny joke. And so sometimes he went too far and sometimes his practical jokes were dangerous. And so anyway, he was a big time believer in eugenics, and that's why people to this day, they consider him to be a Nazi sympathizer and a favorite of the Nazis and, that kind of thing. He did father 7 children with 3 German women because he believed that they were the superior race and that he had superior genes, and so he wanted to spread his seed, right? He wanted his genes to carry on. And I know that can sound crazy to a lot of people, but like I said, that was popular at the time. And he was a smart dude. He was a successful dude, right? And so you think, okay, well, why shouldn't he believe that, right? I mean, if you were him, wouldn't you? Like, okay, I'm smart and I'm special and I'm great. And I've got this sickly child and it's not a good representation, of me, right? So this is what he was thinking. So, all right, let's, actually we're almost done here. So 11 ransom notes were sent. The last one was, gave directions to reach the 12th. 2 men were driving down the road to deliver lumber. They pulled over. They saw something on the side of the road, and that's how they discovered the baby. So we know that. During the search of the kidnappers, traces of mud were found on the floor of the nursery. Footprints were impossible to measure, right? The ones that were found under the nursery windowsill. 2 sections of the ladder had been used in reaching the window. One of the 2 sections was split or broken, and so you had that. And it broke during the descent or the ascent. I guess it could have happened during the ascent as well, right? And then you really got to be careful on your way down, because then you're like, if one of them broke during the ascent or the descent, and they were already what did I say, like 21 inches or whatever apart? So you got 42 inches to the next step. Whew. I just don't believe that this professional carpenter would have been able to. Why wouldn't you build it right? I don't know. When they discovered the baby, they noticed it had a hole in the skull. They were trying to determine, what could have happened, what would have happened. There was a theory that an officer accidentally poked his hole with a stick, just to, he's like looking around, like, what's that? Oh, that's the skull, and he hit it. But others say that because he had water in the brain, right, that the hole in the skull was to relieve the pressure in the skull. So there's that. And I think that's pretty much it. Charles refused to allow the police to go to the cemetery with him in order to track the kidnapper, whoever it was, picking up the ransom. And let's just wrap up. So, in 1941, the Charles Lindbergh home was conveyed to the state of New Jersey, and since 1952, it has been used as a juvenile rehabilitation center. And so, those are my notes. I have 14 pages of notes that I've been skimming along here and sharing with you. And this is, like I said, from a live stream that I did in 2022. Yeah. And so a lot of people were asking me, to share this information, so that's what I'm doing. So if you have an interest in the Lindbergh kidnapping, I hope you found this interesting. I'd be very interested in knowing what your thoughts are about this trial of the century, as they would say, or, it was a big deal. And do you think that Charles Lindbergh played a role in some way with the kidnapping of his son, either because he wanted him gone, because he was embarrassed of him, or because it was maybe a hoax, or maybe because it was, maybe a plan to put his son in an institution? It's tough, right? I mean, we have no way of knowing. And Charles Lindbergh, like I said, who doesn't know this story? Right? You might not have known all the details that I shared with you now, but it's an incredible story, and I hope you enjoyed this. And so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because I've been talking for way too long, and thank goodness my candle is not fully extinguished. Still burning bright. My tea is not warm anymore, is it? Let's check. All right. And so, this concludes this episode of the Strange History Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, kindly like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. If you want to support my research and hear more shows like this, please click on the link below so you can see how you can make a donation directly to me, and also join me on other platforms where I post exclusive content. And of course, I will appreciate it if you could leave a super thanks below. Kindly be kind to all non-human animals, and please don't eat them. They don't like it. Take my word for it. And please do yourself a favor and go to a local shelter and adopt a cat or a dog. You and they will be very glad that you did. Until next time, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys.